Hello, and welcome to a Pokemon XD Gale Darkness video, where today we will be taking on the game with the Flygon line. Now, I do have a lot of hopes for this line, because its typing's really good, and I think its stats are pretty decent. But because it's a Dragon type, I do kind of worry about how quick it's actually going to level up, so it might end up falling behind early on in the game. But hey, maybe it'll do fairly well. So with that, let's go ahead and get right into it. We start off with Trapinch. You know, I've watched a lot of Pokemon, I know a lot about Pokemon. I forgot that Trapinch was the start of this line. I thought it was a two-stage evolution line starting with Vibrava. Anyway, Trapinch has 45 HP, 100 attack, 45 defense, 45 special attack, 45 special defense, and 10 speed, meaning that it's going to be incredibly slow but hit really hard. So what moves does it have to hit really hard with? And of the moves that it gets, until level 41, it only gets one physical attacking type, and that's Sand Tomb, which is really bad. So what I thought was going to be a fairly quick and painless early game might be quite difficult. But anyway, our Trapinch has a sassy nature, raising its special defense but lowering its speed, which is honestly kind of okay, I guess, because at this point it has terrible speed anyway, and once it evolves it'll have a better speed stat, so it's not too bad. And most of the attacks that would do super effective damage are on the special side anyway, so it could be nice having a higher special defense. It has the Hypercutter ability, which makes it so my attack stat can't be dropped. It could also have Arena Trap, but Arena Trap really doesn't do anything in this game because most Pokemon aren't going to be switching out anyway. And according to Bulbapedia, it gets Bite and Sand Attack by level 10. So let's go ahead and get right into it. And the first thing I'm going to do is teach Mimic, just so I can mimic a Pokemon's stronger physical attack, instead of having to rely on my lower special attack for most fights. And after quite a bit of grinding, I get to this battle at level 15, with no real thought of winning it. Just because the Abra can do super effective damage, the Shroomish has Absorb, which is super effective, and the Horsey is just going to keep using water guns. So I don't think I'm going to win this on the first attempt. Except, for some reason, the Shroomish won't seem to go for Absorb to take me down, and I actually make it to the end against the Shroomish with 20 HP. I go for Bite, it looks to be a 3-shot, so there is a chance of me getting Effects Board, but I'm willing to risk it. I go for another Bite, and surprisingly, I make it out of this battle pretty easily. So, with that bit of luck, we move on to the Power Rangers part of the game, and I decide to take on Green first, because I think that I should be able to defeat a couple of his Pokemon just to get the experience. I do get Crit, which takes me down fairly low, and even though most of the attacks are super effective, I think it's not going to be too big of an issue as long as I don't keep getting Crit. Oddish, please, calm down. Okay, well, unfortunately, Oddish isn't a 2-shot, and I only take down one Pokemon. So I decide to move on to Brown, because he's usually the easiest. And that was another crit, and that was another crit. Okay, what's going on here? Trapinch just can't catch a break, and I'm already down to 1 HP on the second turn. Baltoy's not even close to fainting, and I go down. So I decide to go back and do just a little bit of training, just to get my level up a little bit higher, to make it a guaranteed 2-shot on the Baltoy here. And at level 21, I come back to it, I go for a Bite here, which is doing now half health to Baltoy. So I should be able to take it down in just one more turn. And I do just that, and then all that's left is the Hoothoot. It definitely does a decent amount of damage, but as long as it doesn't start getting crits, I should be safe. So another Bite, and I actually get a crit this time. Huzzah! At level 25, I teach Sand Tomb. Now Sand Tomb is a terrible move. It's 15 base power, 70% accurate, and its only benefit is the fact that it does chip damage over time. But the only reason I taught it was to take down this Voltorb here, which basically walled me. And even still, even super effective with Stab, at level 25 I could not take it down. So I did a bit more training, got up to level 29, and now it still isn't enough to take it down in a single hit. However, the chip damage that it does is enough to finish it off. And later on, I'm able to move on and pick up this Carvana here to get the black glasses off of, to raise my bite's damage a little bit. And at level 33, I learned Crunch, which is going to be a huge upgrade, and at this point, I don't think I really need Sand Attack anymore. So I decide to get rid of it, and go into the first boss of the game, which is Lavrina. She leads with a Love Disc and a Beautifly, and I go for Crunch to see how much it'll do. Of course, they're faster than me because I only have 10 base speed, and it looks like Love Disc is going to be a 2-shot, which I am luckily able to finish off this round, but unfortunately I think this Roselia might be too strong for me to one-shot, so I need to rely on a crit. Unfortunately, it does get a Leech Seed off, so I think I'm doomed. But there is a pretty easy way around this, I think, and that's by evolving at level 35. So goodbye Trapinch. I love the design for Trapinch, by the way. I just don't understand why he's a pure ground type. It feels like he's more metallic than that. And at level 35, Vibrava also learns Dragon Breath, which I'm going to teach over Mimic, because honestly Mimic's not really getting any use anymore. And of course with the new evolution means new stats, so it has 50 HP, 70 attack, 50 defense, 50 special attack, 50 special defense, and 70 speed, and gains the dragon typing, making me now more resistant to the moves that were doing super effective damage. The weird thing is though, is this evolution really feels like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, in that I lost 30 attack, gained 5 across every other stat basically, and it's nice to have the speed, but it feels weird just to bring the attack down so far. But I digress. We move on to Lavrina once again, and I use Dragon Breath, still not a one-shot against Love Disc, but it does paralyze, which is really nice. So I'm going to decide to swap targets here to try to see how much it does to Beautifly. It takes it down, and then out comes Roselia. I go for Dragon Breath into it, and I get a lucky paralysis here, but it doesn't trigger, and I get Leech Seeded. So I decide to take down the Love Disc first, because I know for a fact I don't want Delcatty to have the Leech Seed healing. So I decide to take down the Love Disc first, and now I change my direction over to the Roselia. Get a crit, but I don't think it mattered. And then all that's left is Delcatty. I go for a Dragon Breath here, doing over half. And Delcatty strikes back, taking me fairly low, but not strong enough to take me down. And I beat Lavrina on the 3rd attempt. And we move on to the obligatory Mirror Bee. How's it going, Mirror Bee? Good to hear it. Anyway, we move on to the Real Gown Tower, where I pick up my 2 favorite TMs, Hidden Power and Protect, and I'm going to teach Hidden Power right away over Sand Tomb, because at this point Sand Tomb has basically no use. Unfortunately, neither does Hidden Power, because I think its type was Bug, which really doesn't help us at all. So I go over to the Tutor Lady and I replace our Hidden Power with Body Slam, which is a solid damage dealing move that'll actually be using our decent attack stat. And unfortunately, this is where our run with Vibrava ends, because even though I'm able to take down the Quagsire, out comes Lunatone, and I go for a Crunch here, which I hope will one-shot, but it doesn't. It's very close. Water Gun comes out again, and I decide to take down the Lunatone here, get as much experience as I can. Now the thing is if you level up and lose a fight, you don't actually evolve. So at this point, I'm going to forfeit the match, and take my loss, and do just a little bit of training to go up to level 45, to evolve into Flygon, which is definitely going to make this battle much easier, and probably guarantee more one-shots than what Vibrava would have been able to. So, with that, we have 80 HP, 100 attack, 80 defense, 80 special attack, 80 special defense, and 100 speed. And see, it's a little weird to go from our weakest form, having 100 attack, and then lowering it, and then just bring it back up again. It could have just stuck at 100 the entire time. I'm rambling a bit, but it is nice to have 100 attack again. And also our special attack is pretty decent now, and our speed is really good, so we go back into the Snaddle fight once again. Quagsire is still not a one-shot, unfortunately, so I am going to get Rock-Tombed here. But luckily I can take down the Quagsire, and I'm not in any type of danger from the Lantern at all. So I can just kind of leave it there, and take down the Lunatone in a single hit with Crunch. Out comes Cast Form, which should also just be a one-shot. Going for Body Slam here, take it down, and then out comes Matang, which might be able to survive a crunch. It does, but luckily it really can't do enough damage to take me down. So it goes for Metal Claw, doesn't get an attack boost, I take it down, and then all that's left is Lantern, who still hasn't taken me down to half health this entire time. I get a crit and take it down. On the SS Libra, I go ahead and teach Flamethrower over Dragon Breath, because I'm not really going to use Dragon Breath, and we move on to Gonzap. And the nice thing about being a ground type is usually I would teach Protect to make sure I don't get paralyzed in this fight, but because I'm immune to electric type attacks, I don't need to worry about the Electrode or the Fake Out on the first turn. And the Nuzleaf starts using Hyper Beams, I go for Flamethrower to take down the Vileplume, out comes Whiscash. Now I think this is the only thing that could even pose a slight threat to me. It survives, uses Hyper Beam, doing a little bit of damage, takes me down to half. Body Slam finishes it off, and then all that's left is the Skarmory. I go for Flamethrower to take it down in a single hit. And then Nuzleaf uses its last Hyper Beam before going down to one last Flamethrower. So pretty easy. At the top of the pyramid, I go ahead and teach Earthquake, because this is going to be our best physical move, and I teach it over Bite. And of course I have to show off the one Vibrava in the game. Goodbye, Vibrava. And we move on to Gorgon. Now I'm just going to use Earthquake, and neither of his Pokemon are going to use Protect because I have Levitate. So I can just spam Earthquake to my heart's content, and hopefully one-shot everything. Which seems to be working so far. The only questionable thing left is Hypno surviving. So, one last Earthquake. Takes them down. Okay, well that was a really easy first attempt. And we move on to the last area of the game. Now Trapinch definitely slowed down the beginning, but I could definitely see this line being A tier if they keep up a decent momentum. So we move on to Laverna. She leads with her Gardevoir and Gorbis. I go for Earthquake to take them both down in a single hit. And then out comes Roselia and her first Shadow Pokemon, Farfetch'd. Now between the two, I know Farfetch'd is definitely more dangerous because the Roselia is just going to set up Leech Seed on the first turn. And because nothing's going to swap into the spot where Roselia would leave once I take it down, I don't have to worry about Leech Seed being a constant problem. And now all that's left is to Body Slam the Altaria. It's going to be a 2-shot, which is fine. And after one more hit, it goes down, and that's Laverna on the first attempt. Okay, well at the top of the mountain, we run into Snaddle once again. I go for Earthquake to take down both the Matang and the Quagsire. And then it comes out Scizor and Solrock. And I kept Crunch all this time just for this Solrock here, that way it wouldn't be able to set up Shadow Sky. Steel Wing comes out, not doing too much damage to me. I go for Earthquake, take down the Scizor and the Castform, and then all that's left is the Starmie, which I should outspeed, I think. I go for Earthquake, I do, and take it down in a single hit. And I go ahead and teach Protect over Crunch now, because Crunch isn't nearly as useful anymore. And I move on to Ardos. He leads with a Shadow Swallow and Alakazam. I go for Body Slam into the Alakazam to take it down in a single hit. And I'm hoping that the Swallow is going to be using Shadow Half, because that would make some of this fight a little bit easier. I go for Protect, but it's using Shadow Break, so now it's a little scary, because if it decides to start using Shadow Half here, I could definitely be in a world of hurt. It goes for Shadow Break again, so it looks like it's going to be the spamming Shadow Break variant that it sometimes is. I go for Protect here to stave off the Shadow Sky another turn, and it should dissipate this next turn. So I go for Body Slam into the Swallow, and it's not a one-shot. Okay, well that's a bit surprising. I get hit with a Rock Tomb, so now I'm slower than the Swallow. So it sets up another Shadow Sky, which is very unfortunate. Out comes Shadow Electabuzz. Another Rock Tomb hits, taking me down really low on the speed. And probably not going to be able to outspeed the Electabuzz anymore. I go for another Protect here. And the Heracross is swapped over to using Mega Horn. So it's looking to take me down in a single hit, which it does. Okay, well that's okay for a first attempt. I gain a level, I go for Body Slam. Still not enough to take down the Swallow. I do get a Lucky Paralysis though. So I decide to swap over to Alakazam, because if I can get some lucky pairs, it's not going to be nearly as dangerous. I go for Earthquake here, and it actually does one-shot the Kingdra. I wasn't sure about that. It actually uses Shadow Half, which is very unfortunate, because now I'm in a kind of bad spot. I go for Body Slam to take down the Swallow, and then out comes the Electabuzz. I get hit with a Rock Tomb, but I should be able to heal off that damage using Protect, and because I'm not slower than the Heracross yet, it's going to keep using Rock Tomb, so I'm able to take it down without any fear of getting hit by a Megahorn. All that's left is the Shadow Snorlax here, and hopefully Earthquake does it. It doesn't. I get hit. It takes me down to 50, and I'm able to take it down on the next turn. So that's Ardos on the second attempt. Not too bad. We move on to Gorgon, which should be the same as the previous fight. I use Earthquake to take down the Slowking, and the Ursaring in a single hit. Very nice. And I level up. He sends out Aggron and Walrein. Now I think Walrein's really the only threat here that could possibly survive an Earthquake, but it doesn't, surprisingly. Goes down in a single hit. Out comes Poliwrath and Mr. Mime, his two Shadow Pokemon. I go for an Earthquake to take them both down in a single hit. And that's Gorgon. Once again, very easy. And I move on to Eldis, which, if you know the Eldis fights, it goes basically how it always goes. I take down the Manectric on the first turn. Out comes Shadow Salamence, which is always a threat. Silverwind doesn't really do too much to me. And now I start using Protect every other turn, basically. I go for Body Slam here to see how much it does to the Salamence, and it looks like it might be a 4-shot, depending on our ranges. I go for Protect here again. It gets paralyzed, but that doesn't really matter. Silverwind again. So now it's out of Silverwinds, but it did get an Omni Boost on the last one. And I think we should be able to take it down in one more hit, which we do. And now we greet our opposing Flygon. I go for Protect here so I don't get hit by Aerial Ace, and now I go for Body Slam, and I get a crit and take it down in a single hit. Yeah, take that, other Flygon. And then out comes Shadow Marowak. Now, as always, this thing is a real threat because it can do a ton of damage in a single turn. If it hits, that is. I go for Earthquake, not able to take it down, and it misses. I go for Protect here, and I go for another Earthquake to take it down. And then out comes his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Lapras. And while this thing could be a threat, it always sets up Shadow Sky on the first turn. So I go for Earthquake, doing over half to it. So I know it's a guaranteed 2-shot, and one more should take it down. And then all that's left is the Ninjask, which is going to be able to outspeed, but even with a crit, it can't take me down in a single hit. So I go for Flamethrower and finish off Eldis. Pretty easy. Of course, you can't get to the final battle without beating the big box legendary Shadowlugia. And Body Slam really isn't doing that much damage to it. It looks to be a 4-shot. I go for Protect here to heal up as much as I can before the final battle. Another Body Slam. Another Shadow Storm. Protect again to heal up. And I accidentally was clicking too fast, so I used Protect again. So I use it a third time now to heal up and to go for another Body Slam. Shadow Storm comes out, doesn't get a crit, so I'm able to survive and take it down. Okay, well that leads us on to the final battle, where I don't think I'm going to be able to win because, well, as we can see here, Body Slam didn't even do half to the Moltres, so I'm taken down fairly quickly. But after 3 more attempts and using all of our rare candies, I'm up to level 78. And we go into the final battle. I use Body Slam and get a paralysis on the Moltres, but I take it down anyway because it's definitely a pretty big threat. Out comes Executor. Shadow Wind hits, taking me down to about 3/4. I go for Protect here, just to heal up what I can, and I go for Earthquake, which takes down the Rhydon. Doesn't quite take down the Executor, but it is under half, so I know it should be a 1-shot. Shadow Wind misses. I go for Flamethrower, which I think should one-shot the Tauros, but it doesn't. So it's able to set up Shadow Sky. I go for Protect here, to stave off the Fruity Pebbles for another turn. And now I go for Earthquake to finish off both the Tauros and the Executor. And here's the thing, after doing this a couple of times, I found out that having either of them alive is definitely worse off than just having the legendary birds out. And the main reason for that is because Flamethrower actually one-shots Articuno. Or so I thought. See, ranges are a little tricky sometimes, and even though I had seen it take it down before, it didn't take it down this time. So I am in a little bit of a tight spot here, but luckily I will be able to outspeed and take down the Articuno. And as long as the Shadow Bolts don't paralyze me, I think I should still be able to win this. I'm up to 74 health, go for Flamethrower, which I know for a fact does two-shot the Zapdos. And with that, I'm able to take it down and beat the game. So, with that, let's see how well Flygon did. It beat the game with a time of 10 hours, 12 minutes, and 12 seconds, and at level 78, 79, it leveled up right at the end there. And it fainted 18 times throughout the game, 11 of those being random trainers, and only 7 of those being bosses. Now, I do think this Pokemon has the potential to go faster, but I think after the last few playthroughs, where I've been kind of throwing myself at enemies, I decided to kind of take my foot off the throttle a bit more and do a little bit more training. So it could potentially be faster. On the other hand, it could also be much, much slower. So with that being said, Flygon finds itself in the middle of A tier, with other flying fellows such as Charizard, Aerodactyl, and of course, rooting from below, Salamence. Kinda funny how all of them ended up right in about the same area. Anyway, I think that Flygon is pretty good on its own. Unfortunately, Trapinch does slow it down quite a bit. Not because Trapinch itself is bad, I don't think. It's the fact that it doesn't get access to a decent physical type move. So it can't really make use of that 100 base attack, because it only gets Dark and a really weak ground type move. And then you'd think it'd get better once it evolved into Vibrava, but other than the Dragon typing, it really doesn't gain any good moves or stats, really. It only gets 5s across the board, and it loses its attack. The speed, like I said before, is nice to have, but if it can't actually make use of it by taking down an opponent in a single hit, then what's really the point? And on top of that, it still doesn't get a solid physical attacking move. It's not until I get Body Slam from the tutor lady, and then even so, Body Slam is, very generic. It's good, but it's not the greatest, and it felt like I was more relying on moves like Dragon Breath or Flamethrower or Crunch to do my damage, instead of using a good physical type move, and it's not really until Earthquake that I get a decent one. And it's really sad because this evolution line is so cool looking, and it just doesn't reflect the stats or the move pool. Anyway, with that being said, if you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. If you did enjoy this video, consider liking and subscribing. And thank you so much for watching. And thanks for all the support on these videos. Thank you.